Good morning, dear learners. I am Dr. Avijit Deshwas, Assistant Professor at the Institute of Management Studies, Banaras University, and welcome back to the course on Essentials of Financial Management. This is week 3, lecture 11, that is Net Income Approach of Capital Structure. In week 2, we learned about the concepts of capitalization, where we delve deeper into the overcapitalization, undercapitalization, fair capitalization, and what is capital structure. In this lecture, we are going to discuss about the theories of capital structure, net income approach, and the practical questions on net income approach. So, theories of capital structure. There are 4 essential theories of capital structure. The first one is net income approach. The second one is net operating income approach. The third one is the traditional approach. It is also known as the intermediate approach. And the fourth one is Modi, Gilani and Miller approach. So, before delving deeper into these theories, first let us understand the concept of independent and dependent variables so that we can understand these theories in a better way. So, what are independent variables? An independent variable is a factor that a researcher manipulates or changes to see its effects on another variable. The independent variable is the cause in the cause and effect relationship. So, this is the variable which the researcher manipulates and tries to see what impact it has on the dependent variable, right. So, when you are talking about a cause and effect relationship, the independent variables are considered as the cause which leads to certain effects. For example, exercise leads to weight loss. So, exercise is the independent variable, or you can say when you increase advertisement, it leads to increase in sales. So, increase in advertisement can be taken as the independent variable, right. So, what is a dependent variable? The dependent variable is the variable that is being tested and measured in an experiment. It is the effect in the cause and effect relationship. Its value is expected to change based on the manipulations of the independent variable. So, dependent variable is the variable which is being tested or which is being measured in any experiment. So, it is the effect as far as the cause and effect relationship is concerned, and we try to see how the independent variable has an impact on the dependent variable. In the similar example, if you are talking about exercise leads to weight loss. So, weight loss is the dependent variable, or when you increase the advertisement, it leads to increase in sales. So, increase in sales is the dependent variable, right. So, when we talk about the capital structure theories, there are 3 variables under consideration. So, what are those 3 variables? The first one is capital structure of a firm, which you also known as the debt equity mix, right, the proportion of debt and equity. The second one is weighted average cost of capital, you call it WACC, you call it overall cost of capital. And the third one is total market value of the firm. So, when we talk about the debt equity mix, it is the independent variable. Weighted average cost of capital is the dependent variable, and the total market value of the firm is the dependent variable. So, we try to see how the capital structure or how the debt equity mix has an impact on the weighted average cost of capital. If we increase the proportion of debt, does it increases or decreases the WACC? Or if we increase the proportion of debt, does it increases or decreases the total market value of the firm? So, ideally, the weighted average cost of capital should be as low as possible and the market value of the firm should be as high as possible. The relationship between the weighted average cost of capital and market value is of the inverse relationship, right. So, before understanding these theories better, let us take a very simple example so that we have an idea how it works. So, let us say a bucket has a total capacity of 100 liters and it is filled with a mixture of 2 liquids, right, and the cost of both the liquids is given as follows. Let us say liquid A costs rupees 10 per liter and liquid B costs rupees 20 per liter. So, liquid A is less expensive and liquid B is more expensive. You can see you have the image in front of you. So, let us talk about 2 situations. Situation 1 says that the bucket is filled with 100 liters of liquid consisting of 50 liters of liquid A and 50 liters of liquid B. That means both the liquids are in the same proportion, right, the less expensive one as well as the more expensive one. So, now we can calculate the total cost of the solution in the bucket. So, what it is? We can calculate it as 50 into 10. 50 is the amount of liquid A, and similarly 50 is the amount of liquid B, right. So, 50 into 10 is 500, 50 into 20 is 1000. So, the total cost of liquid comes out to be rupees 1500. Now, let us talk about situation 2. If the proportion of the less expensive liquid, that is liquid A, is increased from 50 liters to 75 liters. Initially both were 50 liters. Now, we are increasing the proportion of the less expensive liquid, that is liquid A, from 50 to 75. Now, the composition will change. Now, it has 75 liters of liquid A, 25 liters of liquid B. So, the revised cost will be 75 into 10 plus 25 into 20, which is equals to rupees 1250. Now, you can see this adjustment results in the reduction of the overall cost of solution in the bucket. And why the overall cost of solution has gone down? Because the proportion of a less expensive liquid has increased. So, just keep this example in your mind when we discuss about the capital structure theories. You can easily relate all the theories on the basis of this example. So, let us talk about the first theory, that is the net income approach. So, what is net income approach? A firm can minimize the weighted average cost of capital. Whenever I say weighted average cost of capital, is the same thing as the overall cost of capital, right, and increase the total market value of the firm by using debt financing to the maximum possible extent. So, it says that a firm can minimize its cost of capital as well as increase the market value. These are the ideal things. Every firm tries to minimize the cost and increase the value. And how the firm can do that? It can do this by using debt financing to the maximum possible extent, right. So, the net income approach to capital structure, which was developed by David Durand in 1952, it suggests that a company's capital structure directly affects its value. It posits that by increasing the proportion of debt in the capital structure, a company can lower its weighted average cost of capital, thereby increasing its value. If you remember the bucket example, right, we increase the proportion of the less expensive liquid. So, here we are saying that the company can use larger proportion of debt because debt is a cheaper source of finance, and it can reduce the cost and increase the market value of the company. This is what this theory says. So, it directly tries to link and says that there is an optimal capital structure and the company can reach that optimal capital structure, right. Now, the line of argument behind this is, as the proportion of debt in the capital structure of a company increases, the proportion of the cheaper source of fund increases, and because the proportion of the cheaper fund increases in the capital structure, the overall cost of capital goes down and the market value of the firm goes up, right. Now, there are certain assumptions. The NI approach is based on the following assumptions. So, what are these assumptions? You know, the theories in economics, finance, they are based on certain set of assumptions. These are restrictive, and under these set of assumptions, this particular theories hold, right. The first assumption says that the cost of debt is less than the cost of equity. We already know that. And why cost of debt is less than cost of equity? Because debenture holders assume less risk and equity shareholders assume more risk. So, debenture holders are paid a lower rate of interest as compared to what the rate of dividend is on the equity shares, right. That is why equity is costly for a company and debt is cheaper for the company. There are no corporate taxes. Obviously, this is not true in the real world, but this is the assumption under which this theory works. So, we take it there are no corporate taxes, and the risk perception of investors is not changed by the use of debt. Again, this is an assumption which might not hold true in the real world, but it says that if the proportion of debt increases in the capital structure, the risk perception of investors, whether it is debenture holders, whether it is equity shareholders, is not changed. But obviously, this will not be applicable in the real world, right. But under this theory, we are assuming this. Now, taking few examples where this theory can be seen. Companies with a stable cash flows, companies which have a regular income can use more debt because they can pay interest regularly and they can increase the market value of the firm and decrease the overall cost of capital. Similarly, mature companies, they can also do the same. They can employ more debt and increase the market value of the firm and decrease the overall cost of capital. Now, let us see the the graph of the net income approach. So, the value of a firm, right. So, if you see the graph here, what you see on the x axis represents the debt equity ratio in the company's capital structure ranging from 0% that is an all equity case to 100% that is all debt. So, on the x axis you see it is leverage ratio is nothing but the debt equity ratio, right. Y axis represents the company's value, okay, and the value V line, the upward sloping line shows that as the proportion of debt increases, the company's value also increases. The graph illustrates the direct relationship between capital structure and company value. You can see as you are increasing the degree of leverage, as the proportion of debt increases in the capital structure, the value of the firm increases, and this graph illustrates the direct relationship between capital structure and the value, right. Now, let us see the cost of capital graph for this theory also. The x axis, it represents the debt equity ratio in the company's capital structure ranging from 0% that is all equity case to 100% all debt case, that was in the previous slide also. Y axis represents the cost of capital. So, you see the y axis represents the cost of capital, which includes cost of debt, cost of equity, overall cost of capital, and KE line, the horizontal line at the top presents the cost of equity and it remains constant. If you see, the horizontal line at the top represents the cost of equity and it remains constant. We have already taken an assumption, the risk perception of equity shareholders is not changed by the increased proportion of debt. So, under that condition it remains constant. The KD line, the horizontal line at the bottom represents the cost of debt, it also remains constant. We have also taken the condition, the assumption that the risk perception of investors is not affected by the increased proportion of debt. So, under these conditions the cost of debt as well as cost of equity remain constant and they do not increase with the increase in debt. WACC line, that is KO, the downward sloping line shows that as the proportion of debt increases, the company's weighted average cost of capital decreases. This is also due to the lower cost of debt. So, as the proportion of cheaper source of fund, that is debt, in the capital structure increases, the overall cost of capital decreases. If you remember the bucket example, it is based on the similar concept, right. So, the optimal capital structure according to this theory is 100% debt, as this is where the company's value is maximized and the weighted average cost of capital is minimized. So, the company, as per this theory, as per the net income approach, should try to use as much debt as possible to increase the market value of the firm and decrease the overall cost of capital. So, now obviously we had a certain set of assumptions for this theory. So, we have a certain set of limitations also and they are mostly attributed to the assumptions that we have taken. So, if you just go back to the assumptions, you will see one of the assumptions was the cost of debt is less than cost of equity, that is fine. Now, another assumption was there are no corporate taxes. In the real world, the companies pay taxes. So, this assumption can be taken as one of the limitations. The risk perception of investors is not changed by the use of debt. This was one of the assumptions, but in reality what will happen? If the proportion of debt increases in the capital structure, the risk of liquidation, bankruptcy, these all things also increases. So, obviously the risk perception of equity shareholders as well as the risk perception of debenture holders will also increase, which might increase the cost of equity as well as cost of debt. But this the assumptions are that this the risk perception of investors is not changing, which is again a limitation of this theory. So, once we are clear with the limitations, that is the unrealistic assumptions. So, while the NI approach provides a basic understanding of the relationship between capital structure and company value, it should be used with caution and in conjunction with the other capital structure theories and practical considerations. Now let us look at the few of the formulas that we are going to use to solve questions. The first one is the total market value of the firm, which is represented by V. So, what it is? Market value of equity shares, that is represented by S, plus the market value of debt. You add these two, you get the total market value of the firm. The next is market value of equity shares. How you can calculate this? You can calculate this by earnings available to equity shareholders and you divide this by the equity capitalization rate, right. So, here we are representing market value of equity shares as S, and when we say earnings available to equity shareholders, this is nothing but the, if you take out the interest from the EBIT, that is the earnings available to equity shareholders, and you divide this by the cost of equity or the equity capitalization rate, you get the market value of equity shares. Okay. So, from here you can calculate KE, which is EBIT minus I divided by S. So, from the same formula, and KE is EBIT minus I divided by V minus D. You can also write S as V minus D, the same thing. Now, you can also calculate weighted average cost of capital, or it is also called the overall cost of capital, represented by KO, that is earnings before interest and taxes, that is EBIT. If you divide EBIT by the total market value of the firm, you get the weighted average cost of capital. So, KO is equals to EBIT by V into 100, or you can say V equals to EBIT by KO from the same formula, right. If we are comfortable with these formulas, now we can directly go to do some questions, right. So, illustration 1, XYZ Limited is expecting an annual EBIT of rupees 1 lakh. So, EBIT is given as 1 lakh. The company has rupees 4 lakh in 10% debentures. So, the debentures amount is 4 lakh and the rate of interest is given as 10%. The cost of equity capital or equity capitalization rate. So, K is given as 12.5%. Now, what you want to calculate is, you are required to calculate the total value of the firm according to the net income approach, right. We are required to calculate this total value, right. So, let us start this. So, calculation of the total market value of the firm. EBIT is given as 1 lakh, this is given in the question. So, what you do whenever you have questions on capital structure or leverage, the starting point is the EBIT, that is earnings before interest and taxes. From there you start it. So, what you do is, you deduct interest on 10% debentures. So, debentures amount was 4 lakh and the rate was 10%. So, 10% of 4 lakh is 40,000, right. So, what will be the earnings available to equity shareholders? That is EBIT minus I, that is 1 lakh minus 40,000, this comes out to be 60,000. Equity capitalization rate, this is given in the question and this is 12.5%. Now, using these values, you can easily calculate the market value of equity S, and how it is calculated? The formula is EBIT minus I divided by KE. So, you already calculated this, okay. So, EBIT minus I is 60,000 and cost of equity is 12.5%. So, using this, you can get the market value of equity S as 4,80,000. Market value of debenture, that is the amount of debenture, is already given in the question. The company has raised 4 lakh of debentures. Now, you can calculate the total market value of the firm, which is calculated as by adding S and D. You already calculated the value of S as 4,80,000 and D is given in the question as 4 lakh. You add both these, you get the total market value of the firm as 8,80,000. This was being asked in the questions. I think it is clear. So, let us move to the next question. A company expects an annual EBIT of rupees 80,000. It has 2 lakh 8% debenture. So, EBIT amount is given as 80,000 and it raises rupees 2 lakhs and the rate of interest on the debentures that it is paying is 8%. The equity capitalization rate of the company is 10%. It is given KE as 10%. You have to calculate the value of the firm and the overall cost of capital according to the net income approach. This is the first part of the question. And in the second part, it is saying if the debenture debt is increased to 3 lakhs, initially it was how much? It was 2 lakhs. Now, if it is increased to 3 lakhs, what will be the value of the firm and the overall cost of capital? Now, when you do these questions as per the net income approach, first of all, you should see whether the thing that you learned in the theory is getting reflected into questions. As per this theory, it says that if we increase the proportion of debt, what happens? The market value of the firm should increase and the overall cost of capital should decrease. This is what the theory says. So, we need to see whether in the questions also this is getting reflected or not, right. So, again we are trying to calculate the total market value of the firm. We start with EBIT and it is given in the question as 80,000, right. Now, what we do is we deduct the interest on debentures of rupees 2 lakh and the rate of interest is given as 8%. So, 8% of 2 lakhs is how much? It is 16,000. Once you deduct this, what is left is it is earnings available to equity shareholders, that is EBIT minus I. 80,000 minus 16,000 is 64,000. Equity capitalization rate K is given in the question and it is 10%, right. Market value of equity you can calculate as EBIT minus I divided by KE. EBIT minus I is 64,000 and KE is given as 10%. Using this you can calculate S and it comes out to be 6,40,000. Market value of debentures, it is given in the question and it is 2 lakhs. The company raises 2 lakhs by issuing debentures. Now, you can easily calculate the total market value of the firm, that is V, and how it is calculated? It is a sum of S and D. This 6,40,000 and this comes out to be 8,40,000. Now, you can calculate the overall cost of capital, that is KO, and how it is calculated? You divide EBIT by V and you multiply it by 100. So, EBIT is 80,000 given in the question. You have calculated V, that came out to be 8,40,000. So, 80,000 is how much of 8,40,000? It is 9.52%. So, KO comes out to be 9.52%. So, this is the first part that we have solved. Now, let us talk about the second part. If debenture debt is increased to rupees 3 lakh, what will be the value of the firm, right? So, as per this theory, if you increase the debt, the value should go up and the overall cost of capital should go down. Let us see, is it happening or not? So, calculation of the total market value of the firm if debentures are raised to 3 lakhs, right. So, EBIT is same, that is 80,000. Now, you deduct the interest on 3 lakhs of debentures at the rate of 8%. So, if you remember the assumptions of this theory, if we increase the proportion of debt, the risk perception of the investors, that is debenture holders, also not change. So, when we had the debt of 2 lakhs, the cost of debt, that is interest rate, was 8%. Now, we are having debentures of 3 lakhs, then also the cost of debt is 8%, right. So, we have taken 8% of 3 lakhs is 24,000. So, earnings available to equity shareholders, that is EBIT minus I, comes out to be 56,000, right. You deduct 24,000 from 80,000. Cost of equity or equity capitalization rate is given as 10%. Again, if you go back to the assumptions, it says that the risk perception of equity shareholders is not affected by the increase in the proportion of debt. When we had 2 lakhs of debt, then also KE was 10. When you have 3 lakhs of debt, then also KE is 10. Again, this is an assumption, right, and as per this theory. So, using this, we can calculate the market value of equity, which is EBIT minus I by KE. We have already calculated this. EBIT minus I is 56,000 and KE is given as 10%. So, this comes out to be 5,60,000. Market value of debentures, it is already given in the question. Company raises 3 lakhs of debentures. So, it is 3 lakhs. Now, you can easily calculate the total market value of the firm, which is a combination of S and D. We have already calculated S as 5,60,000 and debentures as 3 lakhs, it is given. So, this comes out to be 8,60,000. Now, we can calculate the overall cost of capital, that is KO, and how it is calculated? EBIT by V into 100. EBIT is given as 80,000. You have calculated the value of V as 8,60,000. So, this comes out to be 9.30%. Now, see, the conclusion part is important. When you had 2 lakhs of debt, right, what was the total market value? It was 8,40,000 and the overall cost of capital was 9.52. When you have 3 lakhs of debt, you increase the proportion of debt, you increase the proportion of cheaper source of funding. So, what is happening? It is evident that with the increase in debt financing, the total market value of firm has increased. How much it has increased? From 8,40,000 to 8,60,000, right? And the overall cost of capital has decreased. How much it has decreased? From 9.52% to 9.30%. So, it aligns with the theory? Yes, it aligns with the theory. So, let us do one more question to have a more better understanding, right. So, it says that ABC Limited expects an annual EBIT of rupees 1,50,000. So, EBIT is given as 1,50,000 and it has 5,09% debenture. So, it issues 5 lakh of debt and the rate of interest is 9%. The equity capitalization rate of the company is 12%. The cost of equity is 12%. Calculate the value of the firm and the overall cost of capital according to the net income approach. So, you have to find the value of V and KO. This is the first part. The second part is, if the debenture debt is increased to rupees 8 lakh, what shall be the value of the firm and the overall cost of capital. So, if we increase the proportion of debt from 5 lakhs to 8 lakhs, so what impact it is going to have on the value of the firm and the overall cost of capital. The third part says, if the debenture debt is further increased to 10 lakhs, that is from 5 to 8 and then to 10, what shall be the value of the firm and the overall cost of capital. So, there are 3 parts, right. So, start with the part A, calculation of the total market value of the firm. So, we start with EBIT, that is the first point that we should start when a question on leverage or capital structure is there. So, EBIT is given as 1,50,000 and you deduct the interest on 5 lakh of debentures and the rate is 9%, right. So, 9% of 5 lakhs is 45,000. Next is earnings available to equity shareholders, that is EBIT minus I is 1,05,000. Equity capitalization rate is given as 12%. So, you can calculate the market value of equity using the formula EBIT minus I by KE, that is 1,05,000 divided by 12%, this is 8,75,000. Market value of debentures is already given and firm uses 5 lakhs of debentures. So, you can easily find out the market value of the firm, that is V, by adding S and D, that is 8,75,000 and 5 lakhs, this comes out to be 13,75,000. And you can calculate the overall cost of capital. How? By dividing EBIT by V. EBIT is 1,50,000 and value of V you have calculated as 13,75,000. So, this comes out to be 10.91%, that is for the part A. Now, let us go to the part B, when you are increasing the debt to 8 lakhs from existing debt of 5 lakhs, right. So, EBIT is same 1,50,000. Now, you have increased the proportion of debt, you have to calculate the interest that you are paying 9% on a debt of 8 lakhs. This comes out to be 72,000. Again, remember the assumption, we are not increasing the cost of debt with the increase in the proportion of debt, right. That is an assumption. So, earnings available to equity shareholders, that is EBIT minus I is 78,000. Cost of equity KE is given as 12%. Again, risk perception of equity shareholders is not changing, it is same at 12%, right. So, market value of equity S you can calculate as EBIT minus I divided by KE. So, 78,000 divided by 12%, this is 6,50,000. Market value of debentures is already given as 8 lakhs. So, you can calculate the total market value of the firm, that is V, which is a combination of S and D. You add 6,50,000 and 8 lakhs, this comes out to be 14,50,000 and the overall cost of capital, that is KO, can be calculated as EBIT divided by V, which is 1,50,000 divided by 14,50,000, this comes out to be 10.34%. So, you see initially the value of the firm was 1375, it raised to 1450 with increase in debt, the overall cost of capital was 10.91 and it decreased to 10.34 with increase in debt. Now, let us move to the third and final part, when you are increasing the debt further to rupees 10 lakhs, right, last part, that is 10 lakhs. So, EBIT is same as 1,50,000. Now, you are having a debenture of 10 lakhs at the rate of 9%. Again, remember the assumption, risk perception of debenture holders is not changing with the increase in proportion of debt, it remains at 9%, this is 90,000. Earnings available to equity shareholders, EBIT minus I is 60,000, equity capitalization rate is given, it is 12%, risk perception of equity shareholders is also not changing if you remember the assumption. So, it remains at 12% whatever the debt is, and the market value of equity can calculate as EBIT minus I divided by KE. So, 60,000 divided by 12% is 5 lakhs. Market value of debentures is given, company is using 10 lakhs of debt. So, you can calculate the total market value of the firm, that is V, which is a combination of S and D. This comes out to be 5 lakhs plus 10 lakhs, this is 15 lakhs, and finally, the overall cost of capital, that is KO, you can calculate it as EBIT by V. EBIT is 1,50,000 and V you have calculated as 15 lakhs. So, this comes out to be 10%. If we try to sum up, we see if it is evident with the increase in debt financing, total market value of the firm has increased. How it has increased? From 1375 to 14,50,000 to 15 lakhs, and the overall cost of capital has decreased. How it has decreased? From 10.91% to 10.34 and finally to 10%. So, we can say that it is getting reflected in the questions as well. So, these are the list of books which you can go through to have a better understanding of the concepts that we have discussed. Thank you so much.